Gervonta "Tank" Davis, the 30-year-old powerhouse, is set to face Lamont Roach in his next title defense. But is this the fight boxing fans have been asking for? The answer, for many, is a resounding no. While Davis is undoubtedly one of the most electrifying fighters in the sport today, this matchup, along with several others in his career, feels more like another example of Tank taking on opponents who don't push him to the limit or enhance his legacy in the eyes of the public. As we break down Tank's career, it becomes clear that while his record is impressive, the journey to 30-0 is full of questionable choices. Is Tank truly the future of boxing, or is he simply riding the coattails of a carefully curated record and promotional machine? Let's dive in. Tank's impressive record, but at what cost? Tank Davis's professional record is an impressive 30 wins, 0 losses, with 28 knockouts. These are numbers that would make anyone in the boxing world take notice. The knockout-to-win ratio is staggering, and there's no denying that Tank possesses immense power in the ring. He has a natural ability to break down his opponents and end fights decisively, earning him a reputation as one of the most feared punchers in the sport today. However, if you dig a little deeper into Tank's record, you'll notice something that raises questions. Many of his wins come against opponents who are either past their prime or not at the elite level. While this is common in boxing to some degree, every fighter has to work their way up. Tank's career trajectory seems to have been engineered to protect his undefeated status. His promotional team, led by Floyd Mayweather and PBC, has built a career that avoids risks and maximizes the financial reward. This isn't necessarily a criticism of Davis's skills. He's a phenomenal fighter, but the fights he's been involved in haven't always been the best tests for his abilities. For example, when Tank fought Mario Barrios for the WBA super lightweight title, the fight was built up as a massive opportunity for Tank to prove himself at 140 pounds. The promotion pushed the narrative of him jumping up 2 weight classes to challenge a world champion. But the reality was that Barrios, while a solid fighter, was never on the same level as Tank. We all knew how the fight would end, and Tank lived up to expectations, knocking out Barrios in the 11th round. But let's be honest, this wasn't a competitive fight. It was sold as a bigger deal than it truly was, and the hype surrounding it was meant to make Tank's victory seem more impressive than it actually was. This type of promotion, where Tank is matched up against fighters who either aren't at the top of their game or don't provide the kind of challenge that would help elevate his legacy, has been a constant theme throughout his career. Lamont Roach, a risk-free matchup for Tank? Now let's talk about Tank's next fight against Lamont Roach. On paper, Roach is an accomplished fighter with a 25-1 record and 10 knockouts. He's technically sound and a skilled boxer, with a very methodical approach to his fights. But is Roach the kind of opponent who will give Tank the kind of test that will challenge him? No, not really. Roach has been in the ring with some solid competition, including a loss to Jamel Herring in a very entertaining and competitive fight. But what we have to understand here is that Tank has fought many of the same opponents that Roach has, and where Roach may have struggled or needed to grind out a decision, Tank has dispatched these fighters in brutal fashion. Roach is an intelligent fighter, but his power simply isn't on the same level as Tank's. And when you consider that Tank has crushed fighters with far more dangerous skill sets, it's difficult to see how Roach is going to survive once Tank starts applying pressure. In the amateurs, Tank and Roach faced off, and Tank emerged victorious. While the pro game is a completely different ballgame, it's still worth noting that Tank has been able to handle Roach in the past. And as we've seen from Tank's previous fights, once he figures out an opponent's rhythm, he usually dominates. Lamont Roach has his moments and can box intelligently, but he doesn't have the punching power or the elite-level skills needed to keep Tank from eventually landing that fight-ending blow. It's clear that Tank will enter this fight with a significant advantage, and unless something surprising happens, Roach will likely become another name on Tank's knockout list. The reality of Tank's career. Why doesn't he fight the top dogs? While Tank's skills are undeniable, the biggest frustration with his career is the lack of marquee matchups against top-level competition. There are a ton of exciting fights out there for Tank that could push him to new heights. Fighters like Shakur Stevenson, Teofimo Lopez, and Vasyl Lomachenko would present unique challenges that would show whether Tank truly belongs in the conversation of the greatest fighters of this era. But for some reason, these fights never happen. Take, for example, the fight with Shakur Stevenson. Stevenson is widely regarded as one of the most technically gifted boxers in the world today. The fight between these two would be a dream matchup for fans, but we've yet to see any serious discussions or negotiations for such a bout. Tank has shown his interest in fighting Stevenson at times, but no contract has been signed. Instead, Tank continues to face opponents like Roach, which, while interesting, aren't the kind of matchups that will elevate his standing in the sport. In fact, there has been talk about a potential fight between Tank and Lomachenko, a fighter many consider to be one of the greatest technical boxers of his generation. But Lomachenko is now well past his prime, and with his recent struggles, a win over him wouldn't carry the same weight as it would have 5 years ago. Tank should have fought Lomachenko back then, but his team kept avoiding that fight. Had it happened when Lomachenko was in his prime, Tank would have earned a much-needed statement win that would have solidified his legacy. PBC's role in Tank's career, protecting the brand. One of the most frustrating things about Tank Davis's career is the sense that he's been carefully managed under the protective umbrella of PBC, Premier Boxing Champions. There's been a lot of talk about how Tank's career has been built with the idea of preserving his undefeated record. Floyd Mayweather, who himself was a master of protecting his record and controlling his matchups, has taken Tank under his wing, and it seems like the same strategy is at play here. Tank has been fed opponents he can easily beat, with carefully timed and marketed bouts designed to keep his brand strong and generate pay-per-view buys. This strategy, while effective in the short term, is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's made Tank a huge commercial success, drawing in fans and making him a major draw for pay-per-view events. On the other hand, it's left many fans frustrated, as they know Tank isn't facing the challenges he should be at this point in his career. Tim Bradley, the former champion and current commentator, has pointed out that Tank has been under protective custody for most of his career. And while it's not unusual for young fighters to be managed carefully, Tank is now 30 years old and has reached the point in his career where he should be fighting the best and proving himself against top competition. Is Tank a great fighter? Tank Davis undeniably has talent. He has extraordinary knockout power, an impeccable understanding of distance, and the ability to break down opponents in devastating fashion. These attributes make him a dangerous opponent for anyone in the lightweight and super lightweight divisions. But despite these talents, Tank's career is far from complete. Until Tank faces a legitimate top-tier opponent, someone who is at his level with no weight manipulation or hidden clauses in the contract, it's hard to consider him an all-time great. His win over Ryan Garcia was impressive, but it's tough to ignore how Tank exploited Garcia's weight issues in that fight. A truly great fighter faces the best on even terms, without any hidden advantages. Tank's promoter, Leonard Ellerbe, may have said that Tank is the best fighter in the world, but until we see him in there with a Shakur Stevenson, Teofimo Lopez, or even a fair rematch with Ryan Garcia, it's hard to agree. The fact remains, Tank Davis is a phenomenal talent, but his career needs to step up to the next level. He has to face the best of the best to truly cement his legacy. And until he does, his reputation as a potential all-time great will remain incomplete. Final thoughts. What's next for Tank Davis? As Tank gears up for his fight with Lamont Roach, the question that remains is, where does his career go from here? Will he continue to take on opponents who pose little threat to his undefeated record? Or will he finally step into the ring with the Shakur Stevensons and Teofimo Lopez's of the world? Fans are growing impatient, and as Tank approaches the second half of his career, it's time for him to prove that he can be more than just a power puncher. He needs to face the best in the world and take on challenges that will push him to his limits. Until then, the fight against Lamont Roach will likely be just another step in Tank's career, a step that's unlikely to define his legacy in the way that many fans would hope. But one thing is for certain, Tank's potential is limitless. It's just a matter of whether he's willing to step up and prove it. What do you think? Is Tank being unfairly criticized, or is he avoiding the top competition? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you never miss an upload.